European countries have already gathered 50% of the necessary funds for the purchase of the promised 2 million ammunition rounds for Ukraine. This was announced in Warsaw by the High Representative of the European Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Kaja Kallas. The informal two-day summit of EU defense ministers in the Polish capital discussed ways to strengthen the EU's defense capabilities and intense support for Kyiv in its protection against Russian aggression. Among other things, Kallas noted that ministers also discussed how the bloc could support security guarantees for Ukraine.
Today's discussions have helped refine our plans. Ministers also discussed how the European Union can support security guarantees for Ukraine alongside with the coalition of the willing. The European Union has many tools at its disposal, from funding the Kyiv's or Ukraine's defense industry to expanding training programs for Ukrainian soldiers and also tightening sanctions that put pressure on Russia. Because the strongest security guarantee is a strong Ukrainian military.
EU defense ministers also agreed that the EU must become more capable in the area of military forces. To maintain a just peace, Europe must be strong, emphasized the Ministry of Defense of Poland. Warsaw itself plans to allocate 5% of GDP to military development by 2026.
NATO is a defensive alliance with its own plans and military capabilities. The European Union is an area of development and security. But first and foremost, there must be security. Investments in our armed forces, investments in our arms industry. This is stronger because the NATO armies will use equipment produced by the EU or for which the EU provides funding, so it is effectively an addition to enhancing NATO's operational potential.
In solidarity and support for Ukraine, NATO stands alongside the European Union. In the first 3 months of 2025, NATO member countries promised to allocate over 20 billion euros in military support to Kyiv, announced Secretary General of NATO Mark Rutte. He also stressed that the threat from Russia to NATO remains significant, so member states will have to increase defense spending.
You will have to spend considerably north of 3% to reach these targets, to close the gaps, to make sure that we can keep ourselves safe in this part of Europe. And that is driving us at the moment. But whilst we are working on those targets, we see these staggering amounts of money coming in. And that is important. That means that Europeans are stepping up, and that's crucial because of the threats from Russia and the increasing threats from China, but also around North Korea.
Meanwhile, EU countries continue to regularly provide military assistance to Ukraine. Denmark announced its 25th support package worth nearly $1 billion. These funds are directed toward strengthening air defense, developing the drone coalition, and supporting the IT coalition.
Today, we present a new Danish donation package that increases Ukraine's fighting power. Because Ukraine's security is crucial for the future of all of Europe. I hope that our donation can inspire other allies to give even more support. Lars Løkke Rasmussen, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Denmark from the Ministry of Defense of Denmark statement.
EU countries are tirelessly increasing military support for Ukraine. On March 31st, Sweden allocated more than 1.4 billion euros. This is the largest aid package from Stockholm since the start of Russia's full-scale war against Ukraine. The very next day, following the example of Swedish partners, Germany also announced the most significant assistance package, amounting to over 11 billion euros. Reported by Alexandra Zaslavets, Nikita Skoblikov, UATV News.
Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has announced that Spain will raise its defense budget to 2% of GDP. He emphasized Madrid supports European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen's initiative to strengthen the EU's military capabilities. According to Sanchez, Europe needs a unified European army.
We are going to fulfill our commitments to the European Union because no one can take better care of Europe than Europe itself. We will increase our investment in security and defense, just as we are doing in other parts of the world, such as the Middle East, Gaza in particular. We will continue to uphold international law by supporting Ukraine in its war against Putin's imperialism, because there is no greater guarantee of security for Ukraine and Europe than a well-equipped Ukrainian army.
Beyond national defense budget increases, EU countries are creating defense funds. Poland was the first to announce such an initiative. The Polish government government has confirmed that nearly $8 billion from the state budget will be allocated to the fund. These resources will be used to modernize the defense industry, expand strategic infrastructure, and develop military technologies.
We will invest billions in shelters, dual-use infrastructure, and the development of Polish arms companies. We will advance our industry and research into new technologies. We are starting talks with the EC. At the same time, within 2 months, in cooperation with the Ministry of National Defense and other ministries, we will develop an investment plan for this fund. Katarzyna Pejczyńska-Nalęcz, Minister of Development Funds and Regional Policy of Poland, on social network acts.
Poland will allocate 4.7% of its GDP to defense in 2025, the highest percentage among NATO members. During a joint press conference with the Polish Prime Minister, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte emphasized Poland's key role in the alliance's collective defense.
It comes to the defense of Poland and the general defense of NATO territory. If anyone were to miscalculate and think they can get away with an attack on Poland or on any other ally, they will be met with the full force of this fierce alliance. Our reaction will be devastating. This has to be very clear to Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin and anyone else who wants to attack us.
While the EU remains a peace-oriented bloc, lasting peace is impossible without strong defense, according to European Commission President Antonio Costa. He stressed that the EU must acquire all necessary means to defend itself against Russian aggression.
Europe's security starts in Ukraine. That is why we need to continue to stand shoulder to shoulder with Ukrainians, to create the conditions for a just, comprehensive and lasting peace in Ukraine and in Europe. If Russia considers that Ukraine's borders are just a line on a map, why should it respect any other country's borders? By supporting Ukraine, we are supporting the United Nations Charter, the international rules-based order, in Europe and beyond.
At a press conference in Kyiv, Norwegian Foreign Minister Espen Barth Eide confirmed that Ukraine remains the top priority on Europe's security agenda.
I am convinced that Ukraine will win this war and we remain committed partners. We are not naive. We are Russia's neighbors and know very well how they negotiate. We must be realistic and not expect too much. We support Ukraine and its red lines. There can be no compromise on Ukraine's sovereignty or the size of its armed forces. Together we must set clear conditions for a ceasefire and, in the future, a peace agreement that will be lasting. Espen Barth Eide, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Norway.
On March 27, Paris hosted the Coalition of the Willing Summit, focusing on Ukraine's urgent needs and the future of global security architecture. Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha stated that this meeting is part of ongoing efforts to secure long-term security guarantees for Kyiv. Reported by Katerina Bastun, Mikita Skoblikov, UATV News.